Hey, welcome back to Evil's Comics. I'm Evil Mike, and I got a review for you today. From Boom Studios, we're going to be talking about Once Upon a Time at the End of the World, issue number 3. It is written by Jason Aaron, art by Alexandre Tefenkgi, colors by Lee Loughridge, letters by AndWorld Design, and then on pages 26 and 30, we got art by Nick Dragotta and colors by Rico Renzi. Um, Before we get started, please like, comment, subscribe. That helps out this channel immensely. Alright, let's see. This book picks up like right where the previous issue left off. Um, we are on the journey with Mezzi and Maceo as they travel through the wastelands. And they're going somewhere. We don't know where they're going. But one of the coolest scenes in this book so far, to me, one of the creepier scenes, is they come across this, and they're traveling through this sea of maggots. I'm gonna have to like zoom in right here, but you can see like it's just a ton, all that black stuff, and it even says it gets in their eyes, and it's kind of like sand. But at this point, they're just traveling through the wasteland. We got Mez and Mezium. Um, And they do get to the scene where they're like a pretty cool scene where they're going through this like it's supposed to be like boiling like asphalt or something like that, and Mezzi is talking about like, hey, let's go around. Maceo ends up like doing his venture thing, and he actually does something cool where he takes all these like balloons and umbrellas and keeps them safe through the like boiling, rain or whatever like that. They end up taking a break at this one spot where Maceo does his whole inventor thing again. He makes a rat-powered, TV, and they end up watching cartoons, and something happens while they're watching like the same rerun for like the 56th time. But Mezzi ends up laughing. She catches herself off guard. She doesn't realize what happened, and Maceo actually has to explain what laughter and joy is. They continue on the journey, and at this point in the book, it's pretty much like Mezzi teaching Maceo how to survive, Maceo teaching Mezzi how to live, kind of thing, and that's kind of where we are at this point. Eventually, just like everything else, the joy and the fun of the journey, we kind of get to this point where it doesn't happen anymore, and they get to this one spot in the wasteland, and they start talking, and everything's fine. As they're talking, they hear something off in the distance. It ends up being this guy, and he's being devoured by like a swarm of rats, and he's being eaten alive. They show you right here, the rats are literally like just crawling in him. He's screaming for help, and Maceo, like Mezzi tells him to leave. Maceo runs over there and tries to break apart all the rats, which he does, and the guy ends up talking and asking for help and stuff. Maceo ends up asking Mez, like, please help him and stuff, and she does what any American wastelander would do. She goes over there and she complies. She stabs him in the chest. She puts him out of his misery. Maceo's really taken back by this. They had bandages and medical supplies. He thought the help that Mezzi was gonna issue out was more on the doctorial side. But after explaining that that's not how she was trained or brought up, due to the American wasteland like guidebook that she's been following or whatever, like the I forget what they're called, the Wasteland Rangers. And it's also the first time at this point that she goes back to mentioning the book. Before then, it was all, they were just kind of in their own thoughts, teaching each other their ways. But at this point, like, Maceo wants to dig a hole for the guy and his dog, because his dog ended up getting eaten by the rats too. So Mezzi tries to fight him a little bit. She explains that in the book they're just supposed to skin him, leave him there. Anything you dig up is going to be like redug up by something else in the wasteland. Maceo does end up convincing Mezzi to dig the hole, which they do, and they end up leaving. After this, we come to one of the sadder points in the book, because they break down for the night. They have the situation where they're doing this back and forth, but they're kind of at that point where and both of them are disturbed and they don't want to admit it. But we come to the part in their journey where it's like the first time that they really lie to each other about what they're thinking and going through and kind of stuff. We see that Mezzi is really distraught, and we find out through like, very brief conversation that it was the first time she had to kill somebody in the wasteland. Even though she made it seem all easily and everything, it really, not only was it her first time, but it's really playing on that mental note, while she's laying there thinking. Maceo, on the other hand, it's the first time he's seen somebody killed up front, so that's plaguing him. But then it's another side of Mezzi that he's seen. The book jumps off back to our wasteland rangers, and we see that they are still on the trail, and they have come to the man and the dog, and sure enough, it seems that something has already dug them up, and not the rangers, like the rats came back for their meal or whatever. And there's a whole lot of statements from the rangers, like, what's going on with this girl? She's not following the book. She left them, like, unskinned, and then we see the chieftain Mon. She's basically explaining that, something in the wastelands has changed her thinking or is controlling her or something like that. They do show you what the wasteland rangers would have done, and it's basically gone through all their stuff, skinned both the dog and the guy, and taken some of his organs as well. But that's what she should have done, being a wasteland ranger kind of thing. But that's basically where they leave that off. They could tell they follow both the guy, Maceo and Mezzi, and they're doing it by following the tears of Maceo, supposedly, at this point in time. So we jump back over to Maceo and Maze, and it's still in the middle of the night, and we see that Maceo ends up leaving. He records a tape, he sets it down on the ground, and he ends up walking off. We find out in the tape that the tape, because it plays while he's going off to do whatever he wants to do, but he basically goes off to hunt and kill something for breakfast. He wants to prove to Mez that he is, a confident survivalist, or he'll be able to teach himself. So then we actually catch up with what Maceo's doing, and he does go out on the hunt, and he finds these three, like, I don't know, jaguar looking, they're cats, and they're evidently like something that's more like the hunted, not the prey kind of thing. But he ends up taking this like slingshot, and it has this like metal ball with spikes and stuff. He ends up shooting it, and it ends up ricocheting and hitting him back in the head, knocking him out, as you can see down here. And the next thing we see is Mezzi listening to that conversation that I just told you about, and then Maceo being knocked out with the three cats around him. The cats are about to eat him, and all of a sudden, something spears him, and of course it's the rangers. They've caught up. At this point, Maceo is knocked out. He does say something when the cats, get there, hey, Mezzi. But at this point, he has like literally knocked himself unconscious. And that's where our present storyline ends. And like I mentioned, from pages 26 to 30, they kind of hinted that we're going back to the future. So here we are with, Maceo in the future, and he is with these guys, and they are still asking for the book, and they're asking for, Mezzi. And this time, this plays out completely different. He is still tied up on the table. But we see that he has some upgrades. The first one you'll see right here in his finger. This thing pops out, and it's actually a saw that pops out of his finger now. He reaches his hand up over here, and boom! This guy has a literal gun in his other fingertip. We find out that his fingertips are kind of like a Swiss Army knife. He has different things that come out of his fingernails. So far, it's like a saw. I think they do show later on like some scissors or something like that. But you do see he has upgrades in other places as well, like here on his arm, and I'm trying to get it to show, but you'll see the the saw blade that comes across his arm. But even this, it like freaks the guy out when he goes to cut. But it is basically this scramble and him trying to get out of this situation, and he's using these Swiss Army knife things that are coming out of his body, basically. But it's basically his fingertips and his like forearms. He's got the saws that come out here, and in a second you'll see that he's got something else that comes out of his forearm. But it takes a little while because he has to get his limbs free. But eventually, right here, he does. He gets his leg, he cocks it back, and sure enough, this dude's got a shotgun in his forearm, in the opposite forearm. But as this is going on, him trying to escape and killing these, I don't know what they are, they're wasteland something, mutants or something, but they are asking about the book, and basically that's pretty much all they say to him. And then eventually, there is something of a mention of a machine, and at this point, you see Maceo, and he's asking, who told you about the machine? And he says, was it Esmeralda? He doesn't say Mezzi, he says Esmeralda. The last guy, the second to last guy, because he's asking for information, who told you about this, basically right here you get to see some of his Swiss Army blades and stuff like that. But he is saying, Maceo is saying that, that he's the one that made this machine. How do they know about it? It must have been Esmeralda that told them. Do they know where she is, kind of thing. And basically the book ends with him stating that he is the world's greatest inventor, kind of thing, as we're seeing right here. But that is where the book leaves us off. As far as I know, there's no hint at a next issue, no cover art, anything like that. But that is Once Upon a Time at the End of the World, issue number 3. I'm still loving this issue. I want to say this one hit on a little cider notes, but that's not a bad thing. To me, that was a great thing. It's making the book more realistic in different ways, kind of thing. I don't know, but let me know down below what you're thinking about this book. Are you still digging it? Art, story, let me know down below, guys. Alright, that's what I got for you. I got some more reviews coming. Always be on the lookout for that. I will let y'all go. I hope y'all are having a great Tuesday, and bye!